He had everything under control. His life, women, adventures. But sometimes even the most confident among us get caught in the traps of our own choices. This is the story of a boy who believed he could live without consequences, until love, betrayal, and karma changed the course of his life forever. Get ready to discover how some wounds never heal, and how some choices leave a lasting mark on us. Welcome to a story about love, loss, and the lessons life gives us, even when we're not ready to learn them. I was in my first year of college, in a new city where everything seemed to move at a crazy pace, full of freedom and possibilities. I lived in a small, modest studio apartment, but it had become my personal refuge, a place where I could be exactly who I wanted to be. It was my space, my world, and I was the king of this little kingdom. And of course, every kingdom needs its queens. Women were my fascination, and I was the master of the game. It wasn't about deep feelings or emotional connections, it was just about adventure, sensations, moments that made me feel alive. I had a way with words, as I like to call it, a natural talent for saying exactly what they wanted to hear. I knew how to charm them, how to make them feel special, even though, in reality, I wasn't putting my heart into it. It was a game, and I played it with a skill that made me feel invincible. And then there was the look. A look I used as a tool, a magnet that drew them in, disoriented them, made them fall in love with the idea of being with me. There was something in my eyes, they said, something that made them feel exposed, vulnerable, yet craving more. And I took advantage of that, without remorse, without stopping to think about the consequences. Sex was an essential part of my life back then. I loved the feeling of power, of control, of knowing I could influence, seduce, conquer. It was like a drug, and I was addicted to it. Every new conquest was a confirmation of my worth, my attractiveness, my ability to get what I wanted. Parties were my territory, a hunting ground where I made the rules. I went to every party, big or small, just to pick up girls. It was a game, a sport, and I was the unofficial champion. Sometimes I'd even leave with two at once, feeling like the king of the night, in control of everything around me. Life was an explosion of fun, freedom, and sensations that made me feel invincible. And of course, I studied occasionally, just to avoid jeopardizing my future. But my true passion was living in the moment, feeling like I had everything under control. And then, one night, at one of those typical parties, I saw her. Alexa. She was different from all the others. Stunningly beautiful, with blue eyes that seemed to shine with their own light. She captivated me from the first moment. But it wasn't just her beauty that drew me in. It was something in the way she carried herself, the way she spoke, her air of mystery and confidence. She wasn't like the other girls I'd met before. She wasn't swayed by my words, my look, or my usual game. She didn't come to my apartment, not even close. Alexa was something else. She was a real woman, with principles, a strong character that made me question for the first time whether my game had any meaning. I had to work hard just for a kiss on the cheek, and that made me want her even more. It wasn't just about her physical beauty, but the way she challenged me, stirred my curiosity, made me feel vulnerable, something I hadn't experienced before. It was a new sensation, a feeling I hadn't known before. Instead of feeling in control of the situation, I was the one struggling to understand, to conquer something that couldn't be conquered with just words or looks. Alexa held up a mirror to me, making me see a part of myself I had successfully ignored until then. And despite feeling exposed, I couldn't stop pursuing her, trying to understand her. My life, which until then had been a series of fleeting moments, adventures without consequences, was beginning to take on a new dimension. And although I didn't know where this new experience would take me, I felt it was something I needed to go through, even if it meant stepping out of my comfort zone. Alexa was different, and maybe, just maybe, exactly what I needed without realizing it. After 3 weeks of trying, of tense moments and stolen glances, I finally managed to kiss Alexa. It was a kiss that changed everything. Passionate, intense, full of an energy I had never felt before. My knees went weak, something that had never happened to me, even though I'd been in similar situations countless times. But with Alexa, it was different. It was as if everything I thought I knew about women, about intimacy, about connection, crumbled in an instant. It was the first time I felt something so deep, so real. After that night, we started seeing each other more often. After classes, we'd go for coffee, take walks in the park, or simply sit and talk for hours. I was discovering her world, the way she thought, her passions, her dreams. Studying was her priority, and that made me admire her even more. She was disciplined, focused, and that drew me in even more. Me, who had lived in controlled chaos, felt drawn to the calm and order she represented. During that time, everything seemed easier, brighter. After exams, when the stress faded, I decided to surprise her for her birthday. I bought a bouquet of flowers, simple but meaningful. When I gave them to her, I saw her eyes light up, her smile widen, and I felt like I had done something right. That evening, everything took a new turn. We grew closer than ever, and the passion between us exploded. Every touch of hers sent shivers through me, my skin warmed under her hands, and our kisses were like sparks igniting everything around us. It was Alexa, in my arms, and I felt like there was nothing else in the world but her and me. Our skin touched, our breaths mingled, and time seemed to stand still. But then, morning came. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, and I woke up with a strange feeling in my chest. Something had changed. The passion, the desire, the connection I had felt just a few hours ago seemed to fade, like a dream evaporating upon waking. I watched Alexa sleeping, beautiful and peaceful, and instead of filling me with happiness, I was overcome by a sense of emptiness. What was wrong with me? Why didn't I feel the same fire that had burned me just a few hours ago? I had gotten what I wanted, but now, having her beside me, I felt like something was missing. Maybe it had just been the chase, the adrenaline of conquering her, that had made those moments feel so alive. Or maybe I was simply incapable of truly connecting, of letting feelings go deeper than the surface. Alexa was something else, and perhaps that's why I had been scared. Because despite all my efforts to win her over, to make her mine, now that I had her, I didn't know what to do with her. And instead of enjoying what we had built, I felt lost, as if the game had ended, and I no longer knew how to continue. From the next day onward, my hunter's instinct began to resurface, like an animal that couldn't be tamed. There was something in me, an insatiable need to always seek something else, to experience, to feel that adrenaline of a new conquest. One moment I was with Alexa, the next with another girl in my apartment. Jumping from one bed to another in a chaos that seemed endless. I knew it couldn't last forever, that Alexa wasn't stupid, and that eventually she would find out the truth, and she did. It didn't take long for her to see me with others, and the expression on her face took my breath away. No words were needed, just a cold, disappointed look, and then she turned and left. She dumped me, and though I thought I'd feel relieved, something inside me was tearing apart. Maybe, despite the chaos I had created, Alexa represented something real, something I had lost forever. But my life didn't stop there. I continued to live in chaos, to lose myself in meaningless adventures, to hide behind the mask of a tough guy who couldn't be hurt. That's how I spent the next 2 years, in a vicious cycle of fleeting moments and superficial feelings, until I met Adelina. She was a wild one, full of life, with an energy that drew me in like a magnet. Something about her was different. I'm not sure what it was, maybe her contagious laugh, maybe the way she wasn't intimidated by anything, or simply the fact that she was authentic. With Adelina, everything seemed to have a different flavor. We grew close quickly, and eventually we decided to move in together. Our life together was a radical change. We cooked together, did the dishes together, shared responsibilities and the small moments of daily life. It was as if we were married, in a strange but comfortable way. Adelina made me feel stable, helping me find some peace in the chaos that had been my life. Meanwhile, I finished university, but my professional life wasn't as easy. I started looking for a job, but opportunities were scarce and rejections were frequent. In a moment of desperation, I applied for an interview at a company that seemed like my last chance, and to my surprise, they hired me. But there was a condition. I had to complete a 3-month training course in another city. I accepted without thinking twice. I knew I had to start somewhere, to take a step forward, even if it meant leaving Adelina behind. I packed my bags with a mix of excitement and fear. I said goodbye to her, promising we'd stay in touch and see each other soon. But as the train left the station, I was overwhelmed by a wave of emotions. What awaited me in the new city? Would I manage on my own? And, most importantly, would Adelina stay by my side, or would this distance separate us forever? As the landscape changed outside the window, I felt like a new chapter of my life was beginning. It was a moment of change, of transformation, and though I felt uncertain, I knew I had to move forward. For myself, for Adelina, for the future we had started to dream of together. I would come to see Adelina every other week, in a ritual that had become routine but was starting to leave a bitter taste. On Fridays, I'd board the train with a light heart and clear expectations, and on Sundays, I'd return, physically and emotionally exhausted. It was too tiring to make this trip every weekend, but I did it for her, for us, for the relationship we had built with so much effort. The first 2 months passed without incident. Everything seemed to be going well. Adelina was the same energetic, lively woman I had known, and I was trying to adjust to my new routine, to life in 2 different cities. But one weekend, I decided to surprise her. I wanted to show up unexpectedly, to see her reaction, to feel connected even when we were apart. I took the train without telling her, my heart trembling slightly with excitement. When I arrived at her door, I knocked a few times, waiting for her to open it with her wide, familiar smile. But no one answered. I waited an hour, 2, checking the clock and trying to figure out where she might be. Where was Adelina? Why wasn't she home on a weekend evening? I booked a room at a nearby hotel, but I couldn't relax. Something told me things weren't right. I decided to spy on her, to find out the truth, even if it meant becoming obsessed, turning into a stranger to myself. Late at night, I saw Adelina returning home, but she wasn't alone. She was accompanied by a man. I stood there, frozen, watching as they hugged, kissed, and laughed together before parting ways. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. She was cheating on me. The woman I had shared so many years with, the one I had dreamed of a future with, was seeing someone else. The next weekend, when I came to her, Adelina acted completely normal, as if nothing had happened. She smiled, laughed, told me about her week, as if there were no secrets between us. But I could no longer play the fool. I confronted her, my voice trembling with anger and pain. I had photos, clear evidence in case she tried to lie. When I showed them to her, her expression changed instantly. Her smile disappeared, and her eyes filled with tears. She tried to explain, to say it was just a friend, that it meant nothing, but her words sounded hollow, false. I felt everything we had built together crumbling around me. The trust, the love, our shared dreams all shattered in an instant. Adelina, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had turned out to be a stranger. And I, who believed I had found peace, that I had settled down, woke up once again in chaos, in an abyss of pain and mistrust. What was going to happen now? How could I move past this? And most importantly, how could I forgive myself for loving her so deeply, only to be hurt so profoundly? I asked her to leave the apartment before I returned from class for good. I couldn't stay with her anymore, couldn't share the same space with someone who had betrayed me. Adelina begged me to try again, not to give up on everything we had built. She said she didn't know what had gotten into her, that it was just a fling with a coworker, something meaningless, insignificant. But her words no longer had power over me. I wasn't interested in hearing apologies or promises. The wound was too fresh, and my trust had been shattered into pieces. I left, leaving her behind, with a heavy heart but determined not to look back. 2 weeks later, when I returned to the city, Adelina was gone. The apartment was empty, quiet, filled with memories that now felt foreign. I was left alone, surrounded by silence and unanswered questions. I tried to focus on the future, to move past what had happened, but it was hard. Every object, every corner of the house reminded me of her, of the moments we had shared. One day, the phone rang. It was Adelina's mother. She wanted to know what had happened, why her daughter was in pieces, unable to speak, trapped in a deep depression. I listened to her, but I didn't offer many details. What could I say? That Adelina had betrayed me? That I was the one who had left? I didn't want to hurt her too, but I also couldn't pretend that everything was fine. I was hurt too, and my pain was just as real. The days passed, and my thoughts were a constant battle between anger and regret. Then, Adelina's mother called again. She had one last request. She wanted us to meet, to give me something. I agreed, though I didn't know what to expect. We met in a quiet park, far from the noise of the city. She handed me an envelope, simple but heavy in my hands. "It's from Adelina," she said, her eyes filled with deep sadness. "Please, read it." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter, written in Adelina's handwriting. The words were full of emotion, regret, and a pain that seemed to leap off the page. She asked for my forgiveness, told me she didn't know what had come over her, that she hadn't realized how much she had hurt me. She wrote about how she wished we could talk, understand together what had happened, and find a way to move past it all. But above all, she told me she loved me, that she had always loved me, that she couldn't live without me, and that her mistake didn't change that. I felt tears fill my eyes. Her letter hit me hard, revealing a part of her I had ignored. But at the same time, I wondered if I could ever forgive her, if I could ever move past what had happened. Adelina's mother looked at me with hope and fear in her eyes. "She's suffering," she said softly. "And you're suffering too. Maybe you should talk." I nodded, but I couldn't promise anything. Adelina's letter remained in my hand, a reminder of our love, but also of the pain we had caused each other. What was going to happen now? Could I move past the betrayal, or was it too late for us? At that moment, I didn't know. All I knew was that no matter what I decided, my life would never be the same. After about a week of thoughts gnawing at me, I decided to visit Adelina. I felt we needed to talk, to try to understand what had happened, to find a way to move forward. But when I arrived at her building, I saw a scene that froze the blood in my veins. An ambulance and police cars were parked outside, and people were gathered in small groups, whispering among themselves. My heart pounded in my chest. What had happened? I rushed up the stairs, my steps quick, my breath growing heavier. When I reached her door, I saw Adelina's mother sobbing uncontrollably, supported by a neighbor. I asked her what had happened, though I already knew the answer. Adelina was gone. She had made a rash decision, a final one, and I felt somehow guilty. If I had come sooner, if I had responded to her letter, if I had been there for her, maybe things would have been different. But now it was too late. The funeral was simple, modest, as if the world was trying not to draw too much attention to the tragedy. Everyone present was silent, as if they didn't know what to say or how to react. I stood in the back, unable to get too close, to look into Adelina's mother's eyes. I couldn't face her pain, because my own pain was already too great. I left quickly, feeling the weight of guilt pressing down on me more and more. From that day on, I was no longer myself. Something in me had died with Adelina. I tried to return to my old life, to my old habits, to move from one bed to another, searching for the void I felt inside. But nothing was the same anymore. I no longer had feelings for any woman, no longer felt that passion, that connection. It was as if karma had intervened in my life, punishing me for everything I had done, for all the wounds I had caused. Adelina remained a painful memory, a shadow that followed me everywhere. Every night, when I closed my eyes, I saw her smile, her eyes full of life, and I wondered if I could have done something differently. But the answer never came. And so I remained, caught between the past and the present, between regret and pain, knowing that, no matter how many women I might have in my life, Adelina would always be the one who changed me forever. And so, this story leaves us with a soul-wrenching question. How much can one person change another's life? Love, betrayal, regret, they are all links in a chain that sometimes we cannot untangle on our own. But now I want to know, what would you have done in his place? Could you have forgiven? Or would you have carried the burden of your choices, as he did? Leave a comment and share your thoughts, because every story has multiple sides, and yours could change someone's perspective. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories full of emotions and unexpected twists. Until next time, let your heart guide your journey.